there is something wrong, mean it as a feeling, a spiritual intuition, or I mean it structurally, mathematically, demonstrably. Something is, I began to suspect that the wrongness wasn't accidental. Here is the Gregorian calendar, the one hanging on your wall, the one your phone, every birthday, every fiscal quarter of modern civilization is irregular, chaotic even, distributed in a pattern so devoid of internal logic that February shrinks in most years and expands in others. The weeks don't divide evenly into months. The months don't divide evenly into years, month and a Friday the 1st. In the next, it to have been designed not for human use, but for something, for the production of a population permanently, slightly off rhythm, permanently, slightly dependent on external authority to tell them what day it is. That sounds like a strong claim. Basic mathematics to grand conspiracy. Stay with me, because there is an alternative, a calendar system so elegant, so mathematically precise, so perfectly synchronized. Understand it, the Gregorian calendar doesn't just seem impractical. It intentional, intentionally broken. Imagine a year stripped of its chaos. 13 months, 28, absolute. 13 multiplied by 28 equals exactly 364. Exactly 52 weeks. Exactly 4 perfect months. Every single month, every single year, without exception. If the month begins on a Monday, the 15th is a Monday. The 22nd is a Monday. You need to look at a calendar to know what day of the week a date falls, locked in perfect synchronization. But a solar year is 365 days, not 364. The solution to this in the 13-month system is a masterclass in temporal elegance. One ceremonial day outside the monthly count, a day of. Let's check out piston engine fighters and attack aircraft. Time, it belongs to no month, week. It is a global moment of pause, of breath between the death of the new. Add that single beautiful day of 0, and you have 365, a solar whole repeating. When you first hear this, the immediate reaction is usually a mild shock, frustration. Why don't we use this? The logic is so airtight, so obviously superior to clunky mechanism of the Gregorian system that its absence from our lives feels like the deeper I went into the historical archives, the more I found that this wasn't a theoretical thought experiment or a modern conspiracy theory scrawled in the margins notebook. It was the operating calendar of civilizations that built things we still can't fully explain. The ancient Egyptians, the Druids of pre-Roman Britain, the Lakota, the Yoruba, 13 months, 28 continents across millennia, entirely without contact. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Isolated cultures, separated oceans and thousands of years, all arriving at the exact same mathematical conclusion about the time. Why? How does a global consensus emerge in a world before global communication? You don't need to look at ancient ruins to find the answer. You already carry inside you. The human menstrual cycle averages 28 days, exactly 13 cycles per solar year. Mythology, this is biology. It is in fact one of the oldest clocks in nature. Civilization, older than any system of governance, older than any Roman emperor who ever decided belonged in a month to satisfy his own ego. The human body was already synchronized, long before we had words for it, and it isn't just the body, it's the look up at the moon. You are looking at the second half of the equation, the synodic lunar cycle, the time it takes for the moon to return to the exact same full moon to full moon is approximately 29.5 days. But the sidereal cycle, the moon's true physical orbit, fixed stars in the background of space, is 27.3 days. The 28-day month sits almost exactly your measurements. It is the perfect mathematical averaging of the moon's own dual rhythms. It is, or something, looked at the mechanics of the sky, looked at the biology of and said, these two are speaking the exact same language. Let us build the measurement from that. Instead, look at what we have. We live our lives, schedule our surgeries, by a calendar whose months are literally named after the egos of dead Roman warlords. July exists because Julius Caesar wanted a month. August exists because Augustus Caesar demanded one. And because Augustus couldn't bear the thought of his month being shorter than Julius's, days were literally stolen from February and bolted onto August. Time was mutilated to satisfy the vanity of a dictator. This raises a simple but highly critical question. When did the measurement of time become a political instrument? The answer appears to be the exact moment it was taken away from the natural world and handed to the state. Think about what it means to track time based on the moon in the human body. It requires no authority. It requires no priest, no king, no government official to tell you what day it is. You can look at the sky, you can feel it in your bones. Natural time is inherently decentralized. It belongs to the individual. But state time must be administered. State time requires a centralized authority to declare it. Look at the physical evidence left behind by the cultures that understood this. Look at the ancient structures aligned to the 28-day cycle. The stone circles of Britain, not just Stonehenge, but dozens of lesser-known megalithic sites, are marked in ways that explicitly suggest a 28-station lunar calendar. Consider the Aubrey holes at Stonehenge, 56 chalk pits arranged in a perfect circle. Inside the earthwork enclosure, 56, exactly 2 cycles of 28. Researchers and archaeoastronomers have proposed for decades that these holes were used to track the lunar cycle and predict eclipses in precisely the way a 13-month, 28-day calendar would require. You move a marker from hole to hole, day by day. It is a massive lithic clock built to hold a specific rhythm. The official archaeological literature treats this as one possible interpretation among many. But why is this interpretation not central to our understanding of what Stonehenge was for? Why is the obvious mathematical correlation treated as a curious footnote? Travel across the Atlantic to the Yucatan Peninsula. The Maya long count calendar is widely considered the most precisely engineered timekeeping system ever constructed by a pre-industrial civilization. It is built on base 20 arithmetic, organized around a 20-day period called the Uinal. But embedded deeply within that larger, staggering structure is a system that cycles through 13 numbers in continuous, unbreakable rotation. 13, again. And 28 days is exactly how long it takes for the Pleiades, a star cluster considered profoundly sacred by the Maya, to complete a specific observational cycle in the night sky. Travel again, this time to the sands of North Africa, the Egyptian civil calendar. 12 months of exactly 30 days each, yielding 360 days. But to complete the solar year, they did not scatter extra days randomly throughout the months. 360 days. But to complete the solar year, they did not scatter extra days randomly throughout the months, like the Romans did. They added 5 epigomenal days, days placed entirely outside the regular calendar, days considered mythologically dangerous, highly sacred, and exempt from normal civil functioning. Does the architecture of that solution sound familiar? Days placed outside the regular count to complete the solar year. A day out of time, different culture, different geography, different millennium, the exact same underlying logic. This is not coincidence. This is not parallel evolution. By chance, you do not have 3 entirely distinct civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, independently stumbling onto the same mathematically perfect, biologically resonant solution by accident. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests a shared inheritance, a common source, something older than any of these cultures' recorded histories, embedded in the practice of tracking the sky, before writing even existed to preserve the reasoning. If this knowledge was this widespread, this persistent, and this durable, what exactly happened to it? And when did we lose it? There is a specific, highly documentable pattern in the historical record of calendar transitions. When Rome expanded its empire and imposed the Julian calendar on the territories it conquered, it did not simply offer an alternative system for tax collection. It actively, violently suppressed local timekeeping. The Druids of ancient Britain, who maintained the Celtic lunar calendar, were targeted for absolute eradication. Their traditions were criminalized, their sacred groves burned, their oral knowledge deliberately and systematically disrupted. When the Gregorian reform replaced the Julian calendar in 1582, ordained by Pope Gregory XIII, entire cultures literally lost days. 2. Realign the broken Julian math with the solar equinox. 10 days were simply deleted from human history. People went to sleep on Thursday, October 4th, and woke up on Friday, October 15th. The days disappeared from the legal record. Buildings were dated according to systems that had ceased to exist. Contracts were voided. Rents were due on days that never happened. Moshe Idel, the Kabbalistic scholar, and others in the emerging field of ethnoastronomy have noted a chilling reality about these transitions. The suppression of indigenous calendar systems was rarely presented to the public as what it actually was, a brutal political act of domination. It was always framed as a correction. It was framed as modernization, the replacement of rural superstition with imperial science. The replacement of the body and the moon with the clock and the state. And here's the strangest, most unsettling detail of all. The people who carried out these transitions, the local administrators, the scribes, the mid-level, priests who adopted the new dating systems, in most documented cases, they appear to have understood neither the full mathematical logic of the system they were abandoning, nor the full psychological implications of the system they were adopting. They acted as if they were blindly following instructions they didn't fully understand, as if the decision had been made elsewhere, at a level of power they couldn't access, and their only job was execution. We are taught to view the evolution of the calendar as a straight line of human progress, from primitive moon watching to the sophisticated, scientific Gregorian system we use today. We are taught that the chaos of our current months is just a quirky historical artifact, a harmless leftover from the days of Caesars and popes. But what if it isn't harmless? What if the irregularity of our calendar is actively doing something to us? I want to pause here and ask something that isn't usually asked in the context of academic calendar history. I want to ask a deeply human question. What would it have felt like to live in a world where every single month was the exact same length? Where the first of every month always fell on the same day of the week? Where you always knew, without consulting a glowing screen, without checking a printed grid on a wall, exactly where you were in the cycle of time? Where the rhythm of your work, your rest, your commerce, and your ceremony, all of it, moved in perfect lockstep with the rhythm of the moon above and the rhythm of the blood within. I'm not making a mystical, New Age claim. I'm asking a practical biological question. What does it do to a human nervous system to live for generations in a state of chronological irregularity? To never quite know, instinctively and bodily, where you are in the year? To experience time entirely as something external and authoritative, rather than something internal and natural? There is an emerging body of research in chronobiology, the science of biological time and internal clocks, suggesting that human health, cognitive function, and even deep emotional regulation are profoundly affected by our alignment or misalignment with natural cycles. Circadian rhythms dictate our hormone production, our cellular repair, our mental clarity. When those rhythms are disrupted by artificial light, we suffer. But what happens when our macro rhythms, our weeks, our months, our perception of the year, are disrupted by artificial mathematics? The field is young. The implications are largely unexplored by mainstream science. But the question it opens is a door I cannot close. Think about what it means to know time. The way you know hunger, not to calculate it, not to check it, but to feel it. The way animals feel the season turning in the air before a single leaf has fallen to the ground. There are isolated indigenous communities that manage to maintain the 28-day count deep into the modern era. Ethnographers and anthropologists who spent time among them noted something fascinating, something incredibly difficult to quantify in a scientific paper. These people exhibited a fundamentally different relationship to urgency, a different relationship to waiting, a different relationship to the present moment. It was as if time were a house they lived comfortably inside, rather than a predator chasing them endlessly from behind. Modern industrialized society dismissed that piece as primitivism, we looked at their lack of anxiety and called it a lack of ambition. But what if it was the exact opposite? What if they were the ones who were biologically sane, and we are the ones suffering from a chronic, low-grade neurological disorientation caused by a broken clock? The loss of the 13-month calendar wasn't just the loss of a mathematical formula. It was the severing of a tether, a deliberate cutting of the cord that connected the human animal to the rhythms of the earth. And if you think this is ancient history, if you think this is a tragedy that only belongs to the Druids and the Maya, a theft that happened so long ago it no longer matters, you are wrong. Because the deepest, most shocking part of this investigation wasn't discovering that the 13-month calendar existed in the ancient past. It was discovering that it almost came back. The early 20th century, a group of the most powerful, influential, and wealthy individuals on the planet realized exactly what I have just told you. They realized the Gregorian calendar was broken, inefficient, and actively harmful to human progress. They mapped out the 13-month system. They gave the missing 13th month a name. They proved it was mathematically and economically superior. And they had the full backing of major governments, the League of Nations and titans of global industry to implement it worldwide. The reform was practically a done deal. The world was about to shift back to the 28-day rhythm. And then, the archives go completely, inexplicably dark. The momentum vanishes. The proponents fall silent. The calendar is buried so deep that today, 99% of the global population doesn't even know the battle happened. To understand the magnitude of what was almost achieved and what was quietly, surgically dismantled, you have to look at the year 1902. The early 20th century was an era defined by a ruthless global obsession with optimization. The Industrial Revolution had reached its zenith. Telegraph wires were shrinking the globe. Rail networks were moving physical goods faster than at any point in human history. The modern world was being built, but the architects of this new world kept running into the exact same invisible wall: the calendar. Scholars, economists, institutional reformers, and philosophers were looking at the Gregorian system not with reverence but with sheer, unadulterated frustration. They knew it was inefficient. They knew it was irrational. They knew it was fundamentally misaligned with both human biology and the natural cycles of the earth. And for the first time in modern history, they organized a serious, sustained, internationally coordinated effort to tear it down and replace it. At the center of this movement was a British statistician named Moses B. Cotsworth. In 1902, Cotsworth published a meticulous, exhaustive analysis of calendar reform. He didn't rely on mysticism. He didn't quote the Maya or the Druids. He relied on cold, hard data. He looked at the staggering financial and administrative waste generated by a calendar where months fluctuate unpredictably between 28, 29, 30, and 31 days. He saw the friction it caused in every single sector of human logistics. Cotsworth's proposal, which became known as the International Fixed Calendar, or the Cotsworth Plan, was essentially a modern industrial reconstruction of the ancient 13-month structure, 13 months, 28 days each, every month identical, every quarter perfectly equal, containing exactly 91 days, or 13 full weeks, every single year beginning on the exact same day of the week. But if you move from 12 months to 13, you have to answer a glaring question. What do you name the missing month, and where do you put it? Cotsworth's answer was brilliant in its simplicity. He called the 13th month Sol, and he placed it exactly between June and July. Think about the profound poetic weight of that placement. Solution: positioned at the absolute height of the solar year, at the height of the summer light in the northern hemisphere. A month named not for a dead, bloodthirsty Roman dictator, but for the star that gives us life. The mathematical elegance of the International Fixed Calendar was undeniable, but the evidence suggests that something much larger was at stake for its proponents than mere bookkeeping. They were trying to cure a systemic global arrhythmia. And Cotsworth wasn't alone. He wasn't just shouting into the academic void. He caught the attention of the titans of the era. Enter George Eastman, the founder of Kodak, At the time, Eastman was one of the most powerful, influential, and wealthy industrialists in American history. He wasn't a philosopher, he was a pragmatist. He looked at Cotsworth's 13-month calendar and recognized immediately that the Gregorian system was costing him a fortune in lost efficiency, accounting friction, and administrative bloat. But George Eastman didn't just write a white paper about it. He didn't just politely suggest that the government look into it. In 1928, Eastman effectively seceded from Gregorian time. He adopted the International Fixed Calendar for his entire global corporation. For 61 years, from 1928 until 1989, the Eastman Kodak Company operated internally on a 13-month, 28-day schedule. He didn't do this quietly as some quirky social experiment. He did it because it worked. The results were immediate and undeniable. Productivity improved. The administrative burden of calculating payroll and production schedules was massively reduced. The accounting books were flawlessly clean. The financial quarters were entirely honest, allowing for perfect, unadjusted comparisons of performance. The schedule of the entire corporation became sane, predictable, and rhythmic. For over 6 decades, hundreds of thousands of Kodak employees lived a dual timeline. Outside the factory doors, they lived in the chaotic, uneven Gregorian world. But inside the walls of Kodak, they operated in perfect 28-day harmony. They experienced the month of Sol. They experienced a system where time actually made mathematical sense. Emboldened by this monumental success, Eastman became one of the most vocal, heavily funded public advocates for global calendar reform in the world. He testified before governments, he lobbied international bodies, he funded massive awareness campaigns. He was pushing the world to the brink of a chronological revolution. By the 1920s, the momentum was unstoppable. The League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, officially took up the question of global calendar reform. They formed dedicated committees. They received hundreds of detailed proposals from governments, from multinational businesses, from religious institutions, and from ordinary citizens, desperate for a system that made sense. The International Fixed Calendar was the undisputed frontrunner. There was serious, highly organized international momentum. There was real, undeniable institutional weight behind the idea. The world was standing on the precipice of returning to the ancient rhythm. And then, almost nothing. The silence that follows in the historical record is deafening. The reforms stalled. The committees quietly dissolved. The global momentum inexplicably dissipated. By the mid-1930s, right around the time of George Eastman's death in 1932, the conversation had effectively ended. The Gregorian calendar remained completely entrenched. The 13-month calendar was quietly, systematically shelved. It wasn't debated to defeat in a highly publicized, famous session of the League of Nations. It wasn't voted down by the public. It wasn't dismantled by a superior mathematical or economic argument. It was just buried. It was buried as if it had never been seriously considered in the first place. As if the most elegantly designed calendar system in the modern era had simply failed to gain traction through ordinary bureaucratic inertia. But the official explanation collapses the moment you put it under a microscope. If you want to understand why a genuinely superior system doesn't get adopted, you have to stop asking the polite questions and start asking the dangerous ones. You cannot ask, why wasn't it better? Because it clearly was better. Even its most fierce opponents openly admitted that the math was superior. You cannot ask, why wasn't it promoted? Because it was aggressively promoted by some of the most powerful industrialists and reformers of the 20th century. You cannot even ask, why didn't it? Governments want efficiency? Governments routinely claim to want efficiency above all else. No, the question you have to ask is this: who specifically benefits from the chaos? And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Irregular months create irregular accounting. Irregular accounting creates opacity, and opacity requires intermediaries. Think about the sheer scale of the financial machinery required to manage Gregorian time. Accountants, tax attorneys, financial administrators, clerks, actuaries, entire massive, highly lucrative professions whose very existence depends on the complexity and friction of time management. Irregular quarters make Honest financial comparison incredibly difficult. A month in one financial quarter has 31 days and 5 weekends, while the equivalent month in the previous calendar year has 28 days and 4 weekends. Try comparing retail performance. Across those two periods, honestly, you can't. Not cleanly, not without applying complex adjustment factors, seasonal conversion tables, and highly paid professional interpretation. Chaos is profitable. Complexity is a moat that protects the people who know how to navigate it. The deeper I went into the economic history of early 20th century finance, the more the resistance to calendar reform looked less like bureaucratic inertia and much more like self-interest. It looked like a system protected by the people it enriched. When the scribes and the administrators of the League of Nations quietly buried the Cotsworth Plan, it was as if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Or perhaps they understood them perfectly. The physical evidence of this suppression isn't just a lack of action, it's an active void. When you dig into the archives of the 1920s calendar reform debates, you find something chilling. Key correspondence from the League of Nations Committee is incomplete. There are numerous references in secondary letters to crucial documents that simply do not appear in the official archive. There are meeting minutes that summarize long, contentious discussions, but deliberately omit the actual content of the debate. The personal papers of Moses B. Cotsworth, housed at the University of Toronto, contain highly suspicious, significant gaps around the exact years of her peak global lobbying, the years when the debate was closest to total resolution. We are not talking about water damage. We are not talking about ordinary cataloging errors or the standard entropy of institutional archives. We are looking at historical gaps that appear on close inspection to cluster entirely around the most consequential moments of the reform movement. The silences are strategic, and the pattern repeats with unsettling precision across other domains of human history too. Systems that synchronize human beings with natural rhythms, with the body, with the light, with the seasons, with the moon, have a curious, violent historical tendency to be replaced by systems that synchronize human beings with institutions, with ticking clocks, with quarterly reports, with fiscal years that begin entirely arbitrarily in January, simply because a Roman king decided January belonged to the god Janus, the two-faced god of doorways and transitions, centuries before the birth of modern finance. I keep returning to the ancient world, to the Aubrey holes at Stonehenge, 56 pits, 2 cycles of 28, to the Maya-long count, 13 numbers rotating endlessly, to the Egyptian calendar, 5 sacred days sitting outside the year. The architecture of the solution was always the same. Different culture, different geography, different millennium. The exact same underlying logic. If the knowledge of the 13-month rhythm was this widespread, this deeply woven into the fabric of human biology and ancient observation, its removal from our lives cannot be viewed as a mere accident of history. It was a severing. There is an emerging movement today that understands this. The World Calendar Association still exists in a diminished form. The 13 Moon Calendar movement, inspired in part by the profound research of Jose Arguelles, actively argues for a return to the 28-day cycle. They recognize that the Gregorian system is a mechanism of artificial, mechanical timing that separates humanity from the biosphere. But these movements are incredibly small. They exist mostly at the absolute margins of public discourse. They are entirely unfunded by major institutions. They are not taught in schools. If you mention them to the average person, you are looked at as a conspiracy theorist, or at best, an eccentric dreamer. The deeper I went, the more the shape of this thing became visible. Not as a single smoky room conspiracy with a single twirling mustache architect, but as a pattern, a recurring cross-cultural, multi-century pattern of suppression, replacement, and forgetting. A pattern of taking something that naturally synchronized human beings with the earth and replacing it with something that artificially synchronized human beings with the state. I'm not telling you the Gregorian calendar is purely evil. I'm not telling you the 13-month calendar is a magic spell that will cure all human suffering. I'm asking a terrifyingly logical question. Why does a system that is mathematically superior, biologically, resonant, historically documented across dozens of independent ancient civilizations, and actively promoted by serious institutional reformers as recently as 90 years ago. Why does that system sit in the forgotten margins of history, while a calendar, built around the fragile egos of Roman emperors, governs every single human life on Earth? I'm asking what? We lost when we lost the rhythm. I'm asking whether the word lost is even accurate, or whether taken is closer to what the historical evidence actually suggests. I'm asking why the deepest, most profound silences in the historical archive always seem to cluster exactly around the moments of replacement, around the transitions, around the exact bloody points where one way of measuring reality ended and a new synthetic way began. And ultimately, I'm asking the oldest version of the question, the one buried underneath all the others. What did we used to know about time, about the human body, about the sky, that we no longer even know we've forgotten? Maybe that is the most unsettling realization of this entire investigation. Not that the ancient knowledge of time was violently destroyed. Destruction is loud. Destruction leaves evidence. It leaves ash in the soil. It leaves the cultural memory of fire and resistance. No, the true horror is that it was displaced quietly, incrementally. It was replaced with something just functional enough that nobody screamed, just workable enough that the loss went entirely unnoticed for generations. We didn't mourn the 13 months because we were never told they existed in the first place. We didn't miss the biological rhythm because we were born already completely out of step. We were handed a broken clock the moment we were born, and we were told by every authority figure in our lives that it was the only clock there ever was. Once you realize that, once you realize the very framework of your days, your weeks, and your years is a constructed, intentional illusion designed to keep you slightly off balance, it begs the final, inescapable question. If they could hide a month from your calendar, what else have we been handed and never thought to question?